Welcome to the 3 Knockdown Rule. Starring Mario Lopez and Steve Kim. Presented by Hustler Casino.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 3 Knockdown Rule is in effect, brought to you by Hustler Casino. I'm Steve Kim, joined by Mario Brotherly Shove Lopez. Welcome back from Philly.
Why the shove?
Well, that's what they call the quarterback sneak in Philadelphia with Jalen Hurts.
Okay, you went a little too inside football for me right there. Shout out to Smoking Tim Frazier and
Tino on the edits. All right, the bout sheet for this show. We review the return of the monster, and joining us on the championship hotline to preview Benavidez Morale, the great Jim Lampley. We have fight review, news and notes, and final flurries. But we want to let you know this podcast is sponsored by Hustler Casino. Open 24/7 and located just 15 minutes from downtown LA. Play now to earn drawing tickets for the Lunar New Year Lucky Money Tree drawings on Wednesday, January 29th. They will be giving away red envelopes all day filled with crisp cash, special VIP gifts, and a celebratory lion dance to kick off the year of the snake. You don't want to miss out.
Round one.
All right, here we go. Round number one, Friday morning from Ariake Arena in the land of the rising sun on ESPN. And still, the undisputed junior featherweight champion of the world, the monster Naoya Inoue, knocks out my nephew, Yi Jun Kim, in 4. Mario, as Chris Rock once said, did what he was supposed to.
Well, sometimes that doesn't work out, though. You're supposed to do certain things, and life gets in the way, or things come up. I just realized I'm wearing my Smoking Joe Frazier shirt as I introduce Smoking Tim Frazier right there. You got to get one of these, Frazier. These are really good. All right, I'm going to be on that. Look, in a way, to me, outside of Usyk, it's a clear 1A in this mythical pound-for-pound list. The dude continues to showcase why he's the incredible talent that he is, and he's active. We always talk about the activity. He's incredibly active. Now, your cousin or your nephew or whoever he was, I like the balls in that kid. Kept pointing to his chin, was game. Sometimes you got to be careful what you ask for because anyway, showing that speed, the power. It seems like every fight there's a highlight reel, and when you finally put him out in the 4th round, I love when a guy is egging someone on to come out and to test him, and he ends up getting tested and he didn't pass the test. What can you say about Inoue other than he pretty much finds a way to win and look spectacular every time there's an opponent in front of him? And again, I want to go back to the activity because of the superstars of the sport. He's the one that's staying the busiest and with the highest quality of opposition. Now, in this particular case, what was it? The guy got hurt, I believe.
Sam Goodman.
Yeah, he got hurt. And so the fact that he didn't wait and he still continued to he had a show must go on mentality and still continue to fight. I love that about him. There's no negatives for me as far as Inoue. I wish he fought here a little more often. We're going to get to see that coming up. Outside of that, what can you say? How can you not love the guy? If there's anything negative you got to say about Inoue, then you got to look at yourself. There's got to be a problem with you.
Yeah, as for that last right hand, they felt that in Seoul, Busan, and the 38th parallel. He was game, but he was certainly outgunned, and unfortunately, that's what you were stuck with. The big news to me was that Bob Arum traveled down there, and he basically stated very clearly, I think my badgering had about 2% to do with this. It looks like in April or May, he will be coming back to Las Vegas, and I believe that's going to be one of the hottest tickets of the year. Also, reading
We don't know who yet.
No,
correct?
David Picasso, the artist from Mexico. Yes. And then it looks like there is a chance he might fight 2 more times after that.
Well, exactly to my point. I love that for a guy of his caliber. And listen, he gets it because he doesn't ever have to leave Japan. He can make a ton of dough and a nice living and career out of Japan. But I think he longs for bigger things and to be bigger than that. The fact that he's coming over here and doing that, I love that about him.
Best speed-power combination in the sport. I mean, you want to talk about a guy that accelerates through his punches and is technically sound. And I think at 22 and maybe 26, it'll be more and more about speed. But he is still among the top 5% in overall power. And the way he turns over his punches and can generate power within 6 inches, it's almost like Joe Louis to a certain degree. And you take a look at the itinerary for Inoue in 2025. We want to get to some of this. There's a very good chance that he could be fighting his WBA mandatory and MJ Akhmadaliev in Saudi Arabia. And there's also talk of him moving up to 26 to fight Nick the Wrecking Ball, the WBA featherweight belt holder. But we want to talk about Akhmadaliev. Our guy Eddie Hearn, good friend of the show, man, he's been, wow, Eddie, stop the Asian hate, because he's flat out saying, why in the world is the monster allowed to duck my guy 3 times? He said he should be taken off a mythical list. Eddie ain't happy.
Eddie knows how to promote. Eddie talks a good talk. I love me some Eddie. And he's having his fighters back, and good for him. And yeah, we want to see that fight. The last thing I think Inoue is ever doing is ducking. I think that fight inevitably will happen. I think it'd be a good little fight, but I like that Eddie's having his fighters back. Look, he comes across a little salty, but and he would sign in a way in a half a second. But the case is he's got to do what he's got to do for his fighter.
You know where Eddie loses me and everyone else? MJ Akhmadaliev about a year and a half, 2 years ago was the unified champion. He had 2 belts at 22. Okay, you know who he lost the belts to? Marlon Tapales. You know who Inoue beat about 12, 13 months ago? Marlon Tapales.
Exactly.
So the bottom line is very simple. Eddie, if you would have kept your guy a little bit busier going into that Tapales fight yourself, you probably would have gotten the fight last year for Akhmadaliev.
And if you're going to have that attitude or keep that sort of energy, where is it for like a Tank Davis? I mean, is it only subjective and for certain fighters? And again, I like Tank Davis, but that talk about polar opposite, someone who's not being as active and is not wanting to face all. You have breaking news?
What a fine point. But you know what Confucius say? The standards you set for somebody is what you think of them. And I think it's amazing that certain people expect Inoue to move up 2 weight classes to take on Gervonta Davis, but then those same fans, you ask Gervonta Davis to face Shakur Stevenson, you would think you're asking them to fight Godzilla or King Kong. Again, the standards you set for somebody is what you really think of them. But Inoue improves to 29 in 0-26 knockouts. Mario, clear off that weekend in April or May. I think that's going to be one of the headline marquee events of 2025. The monster is returning to America. Also, this Saturday night from the Cosmopolitan in Viva Las Vegas on the Zone, super middleweight prospect and contender Diego Pacheco improves to 23-0. Tough 12-round decision over veteran Steve Nelson. Mario, here's the thing that gets me. Ring Magazine, we love their ratings. Doug Fisher, great friend of the show. They have him 3rd in the division. I don't know. Is the division that thinned out that a young kid who I still considered a prospect, is he really the 3rd best fighter at 168?
Well, as I'm thinking out loud, I mean, we saw Munguia, who's a former champ, take a tough loss recently. It is pretty thin as I'm trying to think. I mean, look, top 10?
Yes.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that. 3 seems to be a bit aggressive, but as I'm pausing it, it's not James Toney,
Roy Jones, Andre Ward,
they're not walking through that door
Joe
right now.
Calzaghe, nowhere to be found.
Even Jeff Lacey.
Jeff Lacey, you're right. And gentlemen like Christian and Billy, Caleb Plant, Edgar Berlanga, and the aforementioned Munguia, they're all very flawed. And they're all very inactive. And one thing about Pacheco, he's still gaining his man strength. I still think his physical and athletic capabilities.
What is he, about 23?
He's 23 years old. Boy, time flies. I remember 5 years ago, he was 18 years old, fighting at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon on these matchroom shows. He's starting to fill out. I don't know if he has a lot of speed. I know because he's trained by Benavidez, his father, that there's that natural comparison. I don't see the combination punching. I don't see the natural volume.
It's hard to get that sort of fluidity at that weight. And Benavidez, that's why he's special, because that's sort of a God-given talent he's got.
But it'll be interesting to see how Eddie Hearn handles this, because Pacheco is number 1 in the WBO. Okay. So, Eddie, old buddy, old pal, if Canelo Alvarez does not give Pacheco a shot within reason, are you going to say that Canelo should be stripped of his pound for pound? Or are you going to say that Canelo is ducking? It's funny. These standards exist for certain people, but not others. But quite frankly, I don't think Pacheco's ready. He still looks to me like a very bright young prospect that needs another year of seasoning.
I would agree with that. He's solid. He looks strong, not necessarily powerful, but I think he's trending in the right direction. A little more experience, I think, before he gets in there with the guys we just mentioned, or even a shot at the title. I want to rewind a little bit as I was thinking about Inoue coming to the States. You mentioned Vegas. Such a shame that he couldn't be here in LA on a weekend when like the Dodgers are playing, because we now have the Japan All-Stars on our team. When you have either Yamamoto pitching or Shohei pitching, and then you have Inoue in that same weekend. Can you imagine what would happen here at, say, the Bank or the BMO Stadium? That would be incredible. Or maybe Bob is thinking that.
I'm being told that Top Rank, when this comes to fruition, they will be doing a media and press junket in Southern California, and I've already put in, bring him in studio. Make sure I have a translator, but please, we'd love to have him here. Also on this card on Saturday night, Andy Cruz with a solid 10-round decision, and also Tito Mercado, a bright young prospect, already calling out the likes of Shakur Stevenson. He stops Jose Pedraza in 4. All right, when we come back on the 3 Knockdown Rule, joining us on the championship hotline to preview Benavidez Morel, the great Jim Lampley. And we're back on the 3 Knockdown Rule, brought to you by Hustler Casino. And Mario, one of our favorites, is back.
My favorite. I have no shame in saying is my favorite. The man, Mr. Jim Lampley, the legend himself. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. And you guys are my favorites, of course. So now we're all together.
It's a love fest.
Very happy.
PPV.com, February 1st, David Benavidez, David Morrell, T-Mobile Arena in Vegas. I'm really looking forward to this. Your thoughts on the main event?
Well, what's not to like? Anytime you tell me we're going to see two punchers in the light heavyweight division, two punchers who can box, but who are promising to go to war, I'm in. And I think it's a great fight on paper. It may even possibly turn out to be a great fight in the ring, although both fighters in their most recent outings were forced to go the distance and win less than scintillating decisions against opponents who figured out how to stay on their feet and take them to the end of the 12 rounds. So you never know exactly what you're going to get, but both guys are promising warfare. I expect that more from Benavidez than I do from Morrell. Why? Because Morrell's southpaw and Cuban, and those two factors tend to lean toward, if boxing is an option here, then maybe I'll choose that one. But I think Benavidez, particularly coming off the Vostok showing, wants to build a fire and create it and detonate David Morrell.
Yeah, Jim, I was about to ask you, who impressed you more in their light heavyweight debuts over the summer? I know that Morrell was extended the distance by Hot Rod Kalaje, and then you talked about the fight with the nail for David Benavidez. Do you agree or disagree with me on this? I know Morrell is the Cuban southpaw, so everyone has that stereotype, right? But I look at, in this particular fight, unless he hurts Benavidez early and often, I think it's very difficult to hold off Benavidez for 36 minutes. Do you agree with my statement?
Yes, I think it's difficult to hold Benavidez off for 36 minutes, but Vostok did it. Of course, Vostok is longer and I think a little bigger than Morrell, and also seemed satisfied to leave it in the hands of the judges. Morrell is, making noises to the effect, I'm going to blow him up, I'm going to put him in the hospital, et cetera, the kinds of things that you might expect Benavidez to say before a fight. But at the end of the day, Benavidez is the one with an audience to protect in the United States. He somewhat disappointed that audience in the fight against Vostok. The onus is on David to go in and be the monster once again.
Well, he's, the crazy thing is him being labeled a monster too. He's got such beautiful fluid punches and he sort of overwhelms you with his activities. He's never been really a big one punch knockout artist in his career. It's just been his sort of array of punches that do the job. But with Morrell, he is a one punch knockout kind of guy. It's going to be interesting, I think, the first 3-4 rounds, how aggressive they are with each other in those exchanges, and if someone's going to try to prove something, because I still think Morrell's pretty dangerous.
No, I do, but again, to our point, I think Morrell has to fight from ahead, which means out of the first 4 rounds, you better be ahead 3-1.
Right.
And it still may not be enough because Caleb Plant was probably up 5-1,
Right.
and none of it mattered down the stretch.
No, I agree. I think he's got a little more pop than all those guys, though. So we're going to see how aggressive Benavidez. It's a good fight. I'm looking forward to that.
I mean, the bottom line is both of you guys are making really high quality observations from your knowledge base about both fighters, but there are still mysteries here. And that's part of what makes it a great fight. We know that they are both potentially entertaining fighters. We know that they can both do damage in the ring. We know that it's possible that might happen in this fight, but we don't know exactly how the boxing match part of it is going to play out. As a southpaw with Cuban training, does Morrell have an advantage in terms of craft and know-how in the ring? Or does David Benavidez, with a higher quality opponent resume up to this point and everything he's learned from fighting guys like Demetrius Andrade and Oleksandr Gvozdyk, have more game than Morrell is ready to go against? We'll find out.
Yeah, and we're going to see who grows into 175 better their second time out. That was a variable throughout the summer. You know, when I look at this fight, it's interesting. Is it a final confirmation that Benavidez just said, you know what, forget it, I'm going up to 75? And I think we talked about this about 7-8 months ago. Is it clear now, in your view, Canelo more or less avoided David Benavidez as a super middleweight champion?
Well, I think that Benavidez has concluded that. I think that part of what we're seeing here is that Benavidez is acknowledging, okay, if I'm going to get the Canelo fight, I'm going to have to do it at 175. He's not going to fight me at 168. That has become clear from all the months of talk, and nothing happened. So I think it's intelligent to go ahead and cast his fate to whatever happens at 175. And of course, you know, again, I've made this point before. I've made it to you guys. This is a guy who weighed 230 plus pounds when he was 13 years old. So it's not as if he hasn't been to a high level of weight. He just has to put it back on in the right fashion and use it the right way to be a bigger fighter. I have this dream of Benavidez becoming the first really great, forgive me, Andy Ruiz, Mexican-American heavyweight contender. But you know, that's a hard mountain to climb. And he may be perfectly satisfied to fight at 175, particularly if he can get the Canelo paycheck. And then the possibility of a fight against the winner of Beterbiev versus Bivol too.
Well, that's exactly where I was going to go next. Unfortunately, I don't think Canelo's going back up to 75 because of Benavidez, Bivol, and Beterbiev. I think he's going to stay at 168, try to get that Crawford fight, or if that comes to fruition. Meanwhile, I do think Benavidez will fight the winner of Beterbiev, Bivol. They're having a rematch February 22nd. Who did you have winning the first fight, Jim?
I had Bivol. And so, you know, I was either wrong or I was out of sync with the judges, but I thought that Bivol was the more skilled boxer and controlled the fight in the way that he wanted to control the fight. I cannot argue that Beterbiev was not more aggressive and perhaps more effective down the stretch. Maybe I'm too big a Dmitry Bivol fan, but I had Bivol by a point or two.
We happened to see that fight together. Very good fight, very close fight. I think we both had Beterbiev 115, 113, right?
Right, and I'm a Bivol guy.
Yeah, and I love it. I love Bivol too.
He would have won one of the last 2 rounds. Once he gave up 11 and 12, I said, oh boy.
Well, then that begs the question. On the heels of that, and this fight the rematch is right around the corner, and Beterbiev, I think, just turned 40. Did he not?
He's getting close to it.
He's getting close to it. Who do you like in the rematch? Do you think it benefits Beterbiev now that he's got a victory, or Bivol might have knows what he's getting into and prepared differently, and being the younger man, he would prevail?
Favor Beterbiev in the rematch because I think now that he's lost the first fight, Bivol has to risk more. in the second fight. And the more you risk against a puncher like Beterbiev, the more you're putting yourself into dangerous territory. I don't think Beterbiev ever really hurt him in the first fight, but I think he might hurt him in the second fight if Bivol overreaches trying to counter what happened in the first fight, where, you know, he understands that judges gave the late rounds to Beterbiev because he was perceived as being the more aggressive fighter.
Jim, going back to this card this weekend real quickly, some interesting stuff on this undercard. Stephen Fulton takes on Brandon Figueroa, a rematch of a very close fight they had about 2-3 years ago. Then Isaac Pitbull Cruz takes on Angel Fierro. What interests you the most on this bill below Benavidez Morel?
Pitbull, because, you know, fans love Pitbull. The audience is interested in Pitbull. He lost an upset to Valenzuela in his last fight on the undercard of Crawford Madrimov, and now he's back to try to reattach himself to that very enthusiastic audience, which has liked him in both LA and Las Vegas. So he needs a bounce-back fight, and I suspect he will produce it.
Jim, I was at lunch on Friday with your old friend and colleague, Jim Lampley and Mark Kriegel and Doug Fisher. And we were just talking about different things. And the issue.
Wait a minute. You said your old colleague, Jim Lampley. Do you mean my old colleague, Larry Merchant?
Larry Merchant. Right. Excuse me. Yes.
Does he have a doppelganger?
We're often confused with each other. Yes.
So Larry, Doug, Mark Kriegel, and we're all kind of talking about Mike Tyson. Kriegel's actually coming up with this big book on Mike Tyson. And we're going through some of the stories, and your name came up because basically you were introduced to the country as a boxing announcer because of your work on ABC, announcing one of his fights on the come up. I don't think most people on the West Coast actually knew of Mike Tyson unless you got Sports Illustrated. The question that I have is, Jim, when you first saw him live in person up close, what were your initial thoughts?
Well, I actually called 4 or 5 Mike Tyson fights on the ABC before I went to HBO. The first one was the Jesse Ferguson fight. And, you know, that was the fight in which he annihilated Ferguson's nose with a straight punch that crushed Ferguson's nose and actually with an uppercut. And after the fight, my expert commentator, Alex Wallo, who was an executive at ABC, not an announcer, went into the ring to do the post-fight interview and asked Mike, you know, tell me about the uppercut. And the first thing that came out of Mike's mouth was, Cactamaro taught me that the purpose of the uppercut is to drive the opponent's nose bone into his brain. I was trying to drive his nose bone into his brain. And I had been assigned to boxing by a new chief executive at ABC Sports who wanted to get rid of me. And thought, this will kill Jim Lampley. There's no way the audience is going to accept him as a boxing blow-by-blow guy. And, you know, this is the best way to get him to walk away from his contract at ABC Sports. So I'm up there for my very first boxing match call. Tyson says what he says in the post-fight interview, and I'm standing there thinking, look at what I have accidentally happened into here. This kid is not only going to be the most galvanizing public figure in boxing, he's going to be the most galvanizing public figure in sports. These quotes are off the board. And of course, within 4 or 5 months after that, he was the biggest public figure in the world. And I wound up calling fights at HBO because they wanted Mike. They signed a contract with him, and they saw that as the result of the HBO fights I had done, James Quick Tillis, Marvis Frazier, there were a couple of others. I had a connection with, you know, I knew him. Audience had gotten somewhat accustomed to hearing my voice on the air calling his fights. So the very first fight I ever called for HBO was Tyson Spinks. And we actually, I was at Wimbledon, and we flew from Wimbledon back to Atlantic City. 1 day turnaround, whirlwind, did the Spinks fight. What was that? 33 seconds?
91 seconds.
91 seconds? Yeah.
The Frazier was 33 seconds.
Yeah.
Frazier was 30 seconds. That's exactly right. Get on a plane and go back to London. Yeah. The Frazier fight, Alex Wallo, the expert commentator, used to ride up to upstate New York in his green Jaguar all the time. And he spent the whole trip up saying, do you think I could get away with predicting in the opening on camera that Mike will knock him out in the first minute. And I said, Alex, you're the expert commentator. If you want to say that he'll knock him out in the first minute, you're free to say that he'll knock him out in the first minute. If it happens, you'll get a lot of attention. If it doesn't happen, nobody's going to pay much attention to that. It's just something that an expert says on the air. He wound up, and he walked around muttering to himself for an hour before we went on camera to do the opening on camera. And he wound up backing away from it, and he went to plan B, which was to predict that Mike would knock him out in the first round. Unequivocal prediction, Mike will knock Marvis Frazier out in the first round. Of course, that was 33 seconds, right? Mm-hmm. So now all the way back to New York in the Jaguar, Alex is berating himself and just so upset, and he's heartbroken. Why didn't I say what I thought, that he would knock him out in the first minute? And I'm like, Alex, I'm the only one who knows, okay? The rest of the country heard you say that it would be a first-round knockout, and it was a first-round knockout. So don't tear yourself apart over that. But the whole Tyson experience from the beginning was so striking. And, there was not only nothing else in boxing like him at that moment, there was nothing else like him in sports.
Jim, I tell people who are much younger than I am that you had to be there growing up in the 80s to actually understand how big Mike Tyson was. I mean, this guy had commercials with Diet Pepsi, Kodak,
video games,
his own video game. And Seth Abraham, I interviewed him years ago, and we were going through the history of HBO, and he said, Steve, the highest rated program ever at HBO for a live event was Mike Tyson, Larry Holmes. He basically said 45% of all of our subscribers were watching. So that's like a Super Bowl share. And so, and people don't understand, until he fought Spinks, none of his fights were on pay-per-view. He was actually built up big. When you saw him in the ring with Jake Paul, did you find that surreal or sad?
Well, I find a lot of things about current culture surreal. And yes, I'm saddened by that. I'm saddened by the influence of social media on our society. I could go through a dozen different topics here of the things that disturb me. But yes, it was not thrilling and reinforcing to see Mike Tyson in the ring with Jake Paul. It was another example of how the universe is gradually deteriorating before our eyes. And just to underline your point, Steve, if you have viewers or fans who don't really connect to this and don't remember, Mike was 21 years old. He had one or two really big fights, most particularly the Spinks fight, and he was not just a celebrity. He was the biggest public figure in the world. Everything he did was front page of newspapers and magazines. And the pressures that created for a kid who had grown up so deprived, so unformed. Customato taught him everything about life. And it was astonishing in a lot of ways that Mike survived all that, and that he managed to stay somewhat in touch with himself. So I give him leave to go fight Jake Paul if he wants to, and I hope he made a lot of money.
Yeah, he did end up making a lot of money, and it's when you see the trajectory of not just his career but his life too, and he's become like this beloved character, like this huggable.
Reinvented himself.
He really reinvented himself. Cut to him and Jake Paul were palling around and hanging out at Trump's inauguration.
Yeah,
and it's like it was like a Ponzi scheme. That's what I was gonna say. It's like they got one over on us.
Yeah, well, look, there was a saying in the 80s. There was three great Mikes: Jordan, Jackson, and Tyson. And Tyson may have not been the third most popular one. And that shows you the impact of what he had done. Jim, a couple of weeks ago, I was bored on a weekend, and I started punching up on YouTube old Legendary Nights episodes that were written by Larry Merchant, and you were the host of them. Those things are timeless treasures. I could watch those each 500 times and always be entertained and learn something new. Do you have a particular episode that is your favorite?
I do.
I know what yours is.
Well, I thought it was the most poignant. The Chavez Taylor one to me was the most poignant, and I thought it was just beautiful. I throw it on every once in a while too.
There's no question that the Chavez Taylor episode is the best episode of Legendary Nights. There's no question.
See?
I mean, and there are a lot of really good ones, but Chavez Taylor was so poignant, and it to this day, if I start thinking about it before I go to sleep, I lose sleep. I mean, what happened to Meldrick Taylor that night was so unjustified, so wrong, and I hate it. It's terrible that Meldrick was robbed of the greatest victory in his life.
Jim, this is why we love you as
Now,
a
Jim-
guest.
now,
The
Jim-
honesty, the integrity that you bring to the table, and the intelligence. Just go ahead.
Listen,
Mario.
me.
Go ahead.
This is
Go
not
ahead.
the Mexican in me or being biased, but with all due respect, Jim, Freddie Roach, who I know you respect and know, was at that fight, and he goes, Mario, I got to tell you, I had it very close going into that 12th round, and had Lou Duva not interfered, then that's on him.
Got on the ring apron.
Then maybe, but I saw Richard Steele ask him twice, look him right in the eye, are you okay? Are you okay? And he did not answer. Had he answered or even nodded, then there would be controversy. But the fact that he didn't, I have no problem with him waving it off.
With 5 seconds to go,
Actually three.
Jim, that is what it is. He did not answer. He should, you know what I mean? Lou shouldn't have got on the apron. He shouldn't have.
You know what's beautiful about Mario? You know what's beautiful about this discussion? We're both right. Okay, from whatever perspective you want to proceed, we are both right. You are absolutely right. Technically, there was time still on the clock. Technically, Meldrick did not respond in the way necessary to convince that referee that he should go forward.
But Jim, you are more right, in my opinion. But anyway,
here's what popular response tells you. Richard Steele, and I've seen this, I witnessed it. Richard Steele was never again introduced in Las Vegas as a referee without being universally booed in the arena. Every fan booed Richard Steele for the entire rest of his career because of what he did with Meldrick Taylor.
And Jim, that only intensified after the first Razor Ruddock Mike Tyson fight. Then it just became in surround sound
If you want to
stereo.
keep going back, though, Taylor, who was comfortably ahead, I thought, why did he choose to engage in that 12th round?
Because he had no choice.
Because he's a fighter, Mario.
Yeah,
you know that.
Mario.
But that's my point.
Meldrick was a fighter.
I love him for that. I just came from Philly this past weekend. I love his spirit. Fastest hands I've ever seen. Still to this day. Have you ever seen hands that fast, Jim?
No.
I know we saw Pacquiao, but those hands had to be the most blinding fast hands I've ever seen.
He had blinding speed. He had amazing talent. He was headed toward a truly great career.
Jim, before we wrap it up here, I asked.
Now you want to wrap it up.
No, I don't. Jim has stated such an eloquent, intelligent case.
Does it not mean anything that he busted his orbital bone in his nose? He was in the hospital for 3 weeks, and so
we've never argued the damage.
No, isn't a professional prize fighting about damage inflicted as opposed? We're not doing.
See, I'm with you. I actually thought the fight was close, and the reason why Meldrick had the fight, he had no legs left. He was buzzed.
I know.
That's all. But again,
he should have answered.
But anyway, Jim, great answer. Good job on that. We've got to bring you back.
I love talking about
Jim. I ask every guest here now, leading into what I think is going to be mid-September. All right. Do you side with Tim Bradley, who thinks Canelo has no shot, is going to get cooked against, that Canelo has no shot against Terrence Crawford? Or are you a little bit more measured, like an Antonio Tarver, who thinks it's a good fight, or Mario, who simply thinks Canelo's too big and strong for Terrence Crawford? Where do you stand on all this?
Not just too big and strong. Let me give you my full take here, Jim. First of all, let me preface it by saying I'm a huge Crawford fan.
Yes, he's a huge Crawford fan.
I love Crawford. Not only the most talented, the best ambidextrous boxer I think I've ever seen. He figures out ways to win. I love his mean streak. He's just a talented, great. So much so that I often say a prime Crawford and a prime Mayweather. I would even lean towards Crawford. That's how highly I think of Crawford. With that said, I just can't get out of my mind. I saw Gamboa hurt Crawford. I saw, who was the other Russian kid?
I guess Kovalyaskis.
Yes, Kovalyaskis hurt Crawford. I saw him get stunned by Madrimov this last in person, and that was a very, very close fight. Now you're asking him to go up yet another 2 weight classes in a very strong, dangerous, which is going to be a very well-prepared Canelo, who just put down with one shot, did knock him out, put down a Berlanga, who was 200 pounds that night. Knocked down a very strong, big Kovalev, who in 3 fights, Triple G did not hurt or even drop Canelo, and I don't think Crawford has the power of a Triple G, so I just don't see it happening because of the size disparity. That's it. Your thoughts,
Jim?
Well, I don't rule out the possibility that Terrence Crawford like Meldrick Taylor, can outbox Canelo Alvarez from the opening bell to the end of the 12th round. And if he can outbox him that entire period of time while staying away from Canelo's biggest power punch, which is his left hook, then maybe he's got a chance to win the fight. But there's a reason why there are weight classes in boxing. And Canelo Alvarez's single biggest asset, to my way of thinking, is his chin. You can't hurt it. He has never been put down on the canvas. The only time it was ever ruled a knockdown against him, he bounced off the ropes, and the referee called it a knockdown because he said that the ropes had held him up. So it's just impossible for me to imagine, and I would put myself in competition with anybody as to who's the world's biggest Terence Crawford fan. All right, I called his entire emergence on HBO. I was the blow-by-blow commentator when they put him in against Bradis Prescott in a fight that Prescott was supposed to win. And he began this streak that gave him a tremendous career. I love Terence Crawford. I don't see how he can hurt Canelo Alvarez. And because of that, I don't think he can beat him.
And also, people are overlooking. Canelo has skills. He can lay traps, catch and counter. He can slip counter. And he can do a lot of things.
By the way, ironically, Canelo is the younger man.
Yeah.
Crawford is an older guy. This is an older Crawford, too.
Canelo's a 168-pound fighter at least, and he functions well at 175. Terence is fighting at 147 because economics said you should move up to 147. He had cleaned out weight classes below that, but he's not a big welterweight. He's a welterweight fighter and a great one, truly terrific fighter. But there's a 21-pound weight gap that we're talking about.
Well, Jim, technically, well, his last fight was at 54. See, for me, I wish he didn't face a Janibek at 160.
By the way,
and then
that's
you move
a tough
up.
fight.
It is, but I wish that there was a progression where he went from 54 to 60, then 68. It does seem like a Bob Beamon-sized leap to all of a sudden just go from Madrimov at 54 to Canelo at 68.
What did you think about him against Madrimov? I mean, that was not exactly a dominant.
It was
a tough fight.
Very tough, close fight.
Yeah. No matter what Tim Bradley says.
Right. I thought it wasn't, but I was like, okay.
Jim, how seriously are you taking this Tyson Fury retirement, the latest one?
I don't take Tyson Fury seriously in any public statement. At this point, I mean, Tyson Fury, if he says he's going to seek to become the prime minister of Great Britain, it's BS. And, virtually everything else is. Tyson Fury went south the moment he decided to do a personal expression television reality show. And there's nothing more unreal than television reality. And Tyson, Tyson has been turned around by that, and now he's just a bunch of BS.
Yeah, now he's the Snooki in the situation of a heavyweight boxing.
But while we're on that real quick, I'm just curious with your take on Usyk, Jim, because I'm a huge fan, aside from just the way he carries himself, being an Olympic gold medalist, cleaning out the cruiserweight division, essentially cleaning out the heavyweight division, going up against these guys, 40 pounds heavier, 3 inches taller, looking so impressive in doing so. I know there's not that many fights when you look at it. 23, but the quality of fights and the opposition that he's faced.
On the road, mostly.
And all on the road, and being undersized and usually the underdog going into all of them, he does nothing but win. I mean, is it too soon to kind of consider him an all-time great?
Well, I think it's not too soon to say that he is a very logical choice as pound for pound number one right now, based on everything that he's done. And, there's certainly tremendous intelligence there. Obviously, he's constructed his career according to his own precepts about what he can do. I can be the heavyweight champion. I can beat people like Tyson Fury. Most of us said no possible way. So he's overwhelmingly impressive. He's obviously a brilliant human being. Until proven otherwise, he's the favorite in every fight he enters, whether it's against a super heavyweight like Tyson Fury, or whether it's against a light heavyweight like Benavidez or Morrell. I would pick him to win any of those fights.
Jim, final question here. I know your book is coming out, and make sure you pre-order that on Amazon. I try to read at least 1 or 2 books a month. There you go. I can't wait to read that.
It happened.
It happened.
Yes.
Famous line. So, Jim, what was the toughest thing for you to write in that book?
The toughest thing for me to write? Well, I've been lying around organizing personal recollections for years, knowing that at some point I might try to do this. Probably the toughest thing to do was to write about my very checkered personal life. And I couldn't completely ignore it. So, for instance, I had to write about the whole experience of falling in love with Bree Walker on the set of KCBS TV News in Los Angeles, partially because she was so damned good at being a local news anchor, and I was, a novice trying to learn that craft, and I was scared to death that she was going to obliterate me. So I needed some kind of defense, and I remember feeling this inner urge, I'll get her to fall in love with me, and that way she won't erase me on the air.
Wow.
And so writing about Bree, writing about any of my wives up to the current one, Deborah, that was hard. But writing about your personal life is much more difficult than writing about your professional life.
No, I can speak to that. Real quick on Bree, because growing up in San Diego, she was a San Diego anchor.
She dominated San Diego.
Exactly. I grew up with her, yes.
She got
lived the plot of Anchorman.
She got yanked out of the local affiliate, ABC affiliate in San Diego, because in Broadcasting Magazine, which is the Bible of that business, she had focus research numbers, 97% recognizability, 95% approval. There had never been anybody in the news anchor business, never anywhere in the country, who had numbers like that. She was unique. And that's why they, all 3 networks jumped in. Who can get her? She went to New York. She was on WNBC in New York, and she wound up having a discomforting experience with her male news anchor partner there. And now CBS said, well, we have to put her somewhere else. What will we do? Well, we just made the sports director the news anchor at KCBS TV in Los Angeles. So he's inexperienced at that craft. Let's put this brilliant anchor there with him, and together they'll win the ratings war. Well, together we destroyed the news operation. We fell in love.
I watched it a lot.
We did everything that you're not supposed to do.
I can't wait to read this book. I can't wait to read this book because your memory is just impeccable with the details to everything. I can't wait to
Jim, 2 bonus questions real quickly here from one of our followers here, Ryan Longer. With your time at HBO Boxing, who's your favorite fighter to interview?
Favorite fighter to interview at HBO? Okay, a lot of them. Look, if you're a boxing commentator, you guys know this. You fall in love with fighters, and they all have amazing stories to tell. So Tyson would be on that list for sure. And both Marco Antonio Barrera and Derek Morales would be on that list, even though both of them had to be sort of helped and coached with their English. Their answers were fascinating. Their backgrounds were fascinating. I could go on and on. Lennox is a great guy and an amazing person. So there were a lot of them. And I wouldn't want to isolate any one and say he's my all-time favorite.
And Jim, final one from Jose Rodriguez at The Only Sanch. Jim, what was your favorite or most memorable fight to call with the late, great Emmanuel Stewart? There was no better duo, in my opinion.
Gatti Ward won. Nobody can forget Emmanuel going over the top on Gatti Ward 1. The number of times he said, "Oh my God!" And Emmanuel became my closest male friend ever in life. Oh. We were brothers. We were meant to be with each other. So I loved calling every fight that I ever called with Emmanuel. But Gaddy Ward 1 was the night that he and I really bonded over the unbelievable excitement of it all.
Well, Jim, I know you're going to be busy in the next few days in Las Vegas. Jim Lampley for ppv.com. Now, Jim, you're going to be doing the live chat throughout the card, correct?
Yes, Lance Pugmire, Chris Algieri, Dan Canobio, me, we chat on the computer keyboard throughout the fight. Viewers get to chime in and join the chat. If they want to, they can kick back at what we say and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun. I'm told that it's popular, and it has provided me something really tremendous, which was an opportunity to come back to ringside after 5 years away, an opportunity to get back into talking with people like you guys on these Zoom hookups, etc. It's given me a new life, and I don't have to put on makeup, and I don't have to wear a tuxedo. I wear my own clothes. I go to ringside and chat. It's great fun.
All right. Well, Jim, we will certainly be tuned in again. February 1st, this Saturday, David Benavidez, David Morrell from the T-Mobile Arena in Viva Las Vegas. Jim, we will talk to you soon. I can't wait to get your book.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. There it is.
See you later, Jim.
It happened. You guys know the origin of the title.
I love it.
See you.
Take care, buddy.
And that was Jim. What an interview. Boy, he's always got so much to say. He's the best, isn't he?
I wish we could just talk to him all day. It's the best.
All right, when we come back, we wrap it up with some news and notes and final flurries on the 3 Knockdown Rule, brought to you by Hustler Casino.
Streaming live right on YouTube.
Welcome to the big leagues, kid.
$1.2 million.
And I'm losing in this fucking game. What the fuck?
There's a 400K flip. If I win by the way, you get 10 grand.
Fucking straddle!
For my fans!
What? I read it twice!
Wow. All in a call.
I'm not fucking leaving!
Raise it up.
All right, we want to thank the great Jim Lampley for joining us on the 3 Knockdown Rule, brought to you by Hustler Casino. Ladies and gentlemen, are you looking to get involved with the 3 Knockdown Rule and sponsor our fine program? We still have spots available. Please email info@boxbid.io. Once again, that's info@boxbid.io. Boxbid is an online platform that helps professional boxers connect with their fans by providing exclusive Fight Week merchandise, memorabilia, and sponsorships. You can even buy a shout-out on Boxbid. Boxbid.io handles our sponsorships, and we are proudly working with Boxbid.io.
News and notes.
All right, moving on to news and notes. Couple of things here, Mario. And that's the thing about taping once a week. Things can happen. Things can change. All right, so Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, we talked about that at length on Times Square. They're going to have a prelude card as they have a collision course towards a rematch. But Ryan Garcia will not be fighting Isak Pitbull Cruz, who said, look, I got to fight. I want to concentrate on. So in his place is Rolly Romero. Mario, I think promotionally it's a better opponent because that's going to be, shall we say, a colorful promotion.
That press conference is going to be bonkers. I'm excited about that. Do you feel it was a mistake for Cruz not to look ahead? I know theoretically you would love to kind of take it a fight at a time, but did you just blow a big payday?
Yeah. In my view, I have enough confidence to say, wait a minute. I can make how much money if I just win this fight? I don't understand this. Don't baseball teams have 162 games and you're always looking ahead to something, right? And then when it comes to football, there's a regular season, but you know who's ahead of you. Why is, and I get it, you don't want to jinx it, and I still remember Evander Holyfield was in Tokyo, had already signed his portion of the deal for Mike Tyson January of 1990. You know, he lost $12 million. That's $35 million in today's time. But look, it happens. But in my view, if you know there's a big payday, I look at it differently. No, I'm not going to overlook this guy I'm fighting. I'm going to get more motivated to get there.
Absolutely. And this is, I believe, the second time he's already passed on this potential fight. Yeah, I was disappointed. I think it would have been a tougher fight for Ryan, but this fight and the buildup and all that will be entertaining.
That might get personal based on some of the things that I've been told. And Rolly is a guy, he's not afraid to be Andrew Galata.
Yeah.
He'll go below the belt.
I don't know if it prepares him necessarily to face Haney again. Right. They're very different styles.
But neither did Pitbull.
No, neither did Pitbull, but Pitbull is a higher quality fighter.
Right. And keep this in mind in terms of looking ahead and taking on dangerous fights. I remember I was in Korea. I used to visit there every other year when I was growing up as a kid, especially when I was in Valencia, California. And in Korea, I think there's a network called the Armed Forces. It's just American programming. And in the summer of 1981, there was this card, and it was the prelude of Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns. Tommy Hearns fought Pablo Baez. And then Ray Leonard, though, actually, even though he was fighting as a welterweight, he moved up and took on a junior middleweight champion by the name of Ayub Kalule.
Wow.
It was a doubleheader at the Astrodome. That was in July, and they fought in September. So my view is this. Did Ray Leonard jeopardize the pay? Yeah,
Right.
I guess he did, but guess what? You got to win the fight anyway.
Fighters fight.
Well, back then they did.
Yeah.
And there was a different brand of fighters. And Mario, it is finalized. It has been announced by Matchroom and is being reported. Unification has been accomplished. Jaron Ennis will take on Amantas Stanionis April 12th in Atlantic City. I don't know how much time Jaron Ennis has at 147, but I think there was some pressure on Eddie Hearn, and he absolutely delivered. So congratulations to Boots, and good luck.
Final flurries.
Mario, moving on to Final Flurries. Man, I didn't see the card, but I was watching some of the highlights on Twitter. That BKFC had some violent chingazos. Orale. Wow.
Can I tell you something? Every single fight at Bare Knuckle Mania was great. I thought I witnessed 3 murders.
Yeah.
It was, first of all, the scene, Philly, what a great town. And David Feldman, that's where the owner and founder of BKFC, that's where he happens to be from. And the town was hyped anyway because the Eagles were playing there on Sunday. But not the Honda Center. What is the name of the place? The Wells Fargo Center.
Yeah.
Pardon me.
Home of the Sixers.
Home of the Sixers and the Flyers. By the way, they have them all next to each other, Kim.
Yeah.
They have Wells Fargo Center.
The ballpark.
The ballpark. They're all literally.
And the link.
Yes, you could literally walk
Yeah.
to them into the parking lot. I can't imagine when all 3 are going on. It must be chaotic. But anyway, it was buzzing. 18,000 people there. Everybody was there early from the preliminary fights. And the preliminary fights were awesome. We're talking John L. Sullivan, bare knuckle, but it was so brutal and loud and amazing to see. Ironically, I don't think you suffer as much damage because it's not an accumulation of blows through over 12 rounds. They fight 5 2-minute rounds. Okay, you're getting carved up unless you're taking your guy out of there, which some of them did in the first couple of rounds. And all the guys that were kind of showboating in the lead up to the fights and in the weigh-ins, they had their comeuppance and they seemed to get brutally knocked out. But some of them, I'm talking, they looked like they were convulsing on the ground. It was crazy. I had 5 friends that met me out there. They go, this was the coolest thing they've ever seen. You got to go, bro. It is wild. Frazier, I know you were at the last one, but these were even crazier. These were crazy. These fights were next level. It was on DAZN. I know they were incredibly happy. I hope they replay it for free to really kind of get this audience. It was a whole nother level of brutality.
The one that I went to, your wife and I almost got into a fight in the crowd because a fight literally fell on us.
Ironically, there were no fights in Philly. They were well behaved. In Philly, you would think there would be. They were all very well behaved. But if you've got a chance to see a BKFC fight in person, you got to go to the next one. They're a good time.
As much boxing as you watch and have you seen up close, when you see fist to jaw, do you get squeamish at all?
Man, the sound is really different because these are real fighters. These are either pro boxers or pro MMA guys. There were 2 champions at that, Jeremy Stevens and Eddie Alvarez. Very good fighters at the end, and it was the heavyweight fight. One shot, my God, he was a bear of a man. He was 6'5", 275. He hit him. He did like a little slip, and just with his overhand right, it was like a polar bear hit you with his paw, and the guy was huge himself, the other guy. But the sound was just wild. You never seen anything like it.
The sounds of the hits, I still remember.
It's
crazy. And that was like last year.
It's a cracking sound.
It's a crack. It's like a bat hitting a ball kind of sound. It's all you can hear stuff cracking. It's wild.
Mario, it reminded me. Speaking of smaller gloves or hitting bare knuckle, Sylvester Stallone caused a little bit of a stir on social media, and Devin Haney got all offended.
Well, he also got a lot of grief from a lot of people,
right?
Too.
Because and I remember Frank Stallone actually brought in some smaller gloves when he visited us, All he said was, hey, look, these 6-ounce gloves with very little padding. Remember, those used to be horsehair.
Yeah.
They were not padded. I don't know if they actually reused gloves, but I'm sure that not every fight had brand new gloves. And he said, hey, life was tougher and boxing was tougher.
That's the truth.
That's the truth. Well, what was the argument about?
There was no fallacy there.
There was no fallacy, and fighters actually fought more, 15 rounds.
Exactly.
And back then, I see fights where if you're up and you're taking a beating, it doesn't matter. The referees, and then they count all the way to 10.
Right.
And even if you wobble up, they say, okay, if you're up, you can fight. And one thing I did disagree, though, Sly, as someone that does travel once in a while, I actually appreciate the luggage now has wheels.
As opposed to?
Well, he actually said, luggage wasn't meant to have wheels. You're not supposed to. And I'm like, no, come on.
You got to come on. No, the rollies.
Yeah.
I convinced you to get the rollies, didn't I?
Yeah, no, I've had those for years.
Have
trust
you had
me.
All right, because Esterman I convinced to get. No, you got to have the roll, especially when you're traveling a lot and you got to put it up and the whole thing.
Right. I mean, Sly, you don't take a horse and buggy when you go to the store. You drive a car.
Right,
okay?
exactly. We're not Amish.
Yeah, progress is actually a good thing.
Yeah.
But I didn't understand why Devin was so offended. Devin, I'm going to tell you, a lot of your colleagues, maybe even you couldn't do what those guys did in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. You're not built for it. Just culturally, we have changed as people. It's like football. When people say football's gotten soft, it's gotten softer. It still takes a special human being to play in the National Football League.
Absolutely.
But is it like when it was in the 70s and 80s? No.
It was not. It was not. You didn't have Lawrence Taylor or Marshall coming off the end and just killing you how you did. And it was ironic that Devin said he wouldn't know a left hook from a fish hook. Why do you have to use the left hook when
left hook? Yeah.
when that was his Achilles
and then
heel?
Then he deleted it, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, keep your opinion up.
I know people were giving him a really hard time. He's had it tough. I'm gonna be really and look, I know his father. I like when a father in the bond with a son. I get it, having sons of my own. But at the same time, you got to know when to pull back. I never, when my boys' tournaments, and my boy did really well this past weekend, shout out, proud dad moment there. I never say anything or scream anything other than afterwards, and I'll tell them because I don't want, he's already got enough attention and eyes on him. I don't want to bring more. So I'm just kind of quiet. I let the coaches do their thing, and I just kind of lay back on the in the shadows.
Speaking of Bill Haney, Oscar clapped back at them. That was pretty good there.
He came back with his editing is getting like real pro. I told him, I said, hey, bro. I go, you're editing. I go, you get like a professional. He goes, hey, dude, I got a guy. So he's got a guy.
We can tell.
He's got a guy that does his own editing. And I go, he's doing a good job, dude.
And we got to get Oscar in here to do a live clap back. Final thing here, Mario. Are the Chiefs like Ric Flair? No matter what happens, they get beat up all this time, but they somehow find a way to win. I just
if you
cannot
have the refs
stand.
on your side like that.
That bad, huh?
Come on, man. There was some. They get all the questionable calls, really? You don't think so, Kim?
They get most
a lot
of
of favorable calls, don't you think?
I'm with you, but I think Buffalo blew it too, though.
I agree. They had some bad plays, but
James Cook only gets the ball 16 times.
Chiefs are not going to be a team that beats themselves, but you don't need extra help with the refs and giving them those extra favorable calls, man. More importantly, can the Eagles beat them?
They're a good team.
I think so too. Saquon Barkley.
But Hurts has to make throws because you know what Kansas City is going to do. They're going to load the box.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to dare them. And look, Philadelphia has Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, and they have a very good tight end in Dallas Goedert. Jalen Hurts has to be able to throw the ball effectively because you know what's the first thing a good defense does? They make you left-handed.
Can you do it?
Yes, and Philadelphia's defensive line led by Jalen Carter. The spread's only 1.5.
Over for who?
For Kansas City.
Kansas City's
so basically they're saying it's a pick-em game. It's a great Super Bowl. It's going to be a really good time. But man, the Chiefs piss me off.
I think it's going to be low rated. Another to the same thing. 2-5. I think it's going to be low rated. I don't think it's going to be.
Becoming Fast and Furious for you. The sequels.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly
Police
it.
Academy.
That's exactly it. It's Police Academy 9 or whatever it is. That's exactly it. I mean, come on. You wanted to see anyone. Buffalo, Detroit, and Baltimore. We wanted to see anyone, but other than that, but whatever. What are you gonna do?
And that game's in 2 weeks. Mario, you've been traveling a lot as always. You going anywhere?
I sound a little under the weather.
Going anywhere this weekend?
This weekend, I am not going anywhere. I'm going to be in town. My daughter has a cheerleading competition. My son has another wrestling tournament. They might be doing, oh my gosh, I got to tell you about, he's my son, because he's been training Muay Thai, did I tell you? And kickboxing, both my boys. And the coach comes up to me and says, I want them to do the tournament. I think they'll do real well. And I go, oh no, I don't think Mrs. Lopez will want it for that. My boys want to do it. That's a whole nother level, dude. And put you right there. I don't know about that. So we'll have to talk about that. But no, something I'm doing on Sunday for the Dodgers, we're doing their polar plunge with Chris Taylor. I'm hosting the event. So we're going to go out and it's supposed to be only like 39, 40 degrees in the water.
Oh,
and we swim out to the buoy and come back. That's cold, though, bro.
Yeah.
That's still cold.
I'm actually
You're down
gonna,
to do it or what?
No. I am actually going to be coming back. I'll be in England for about 40 hours.
Oh, that's right. You're going to England.
Going for the undisputed launch party in beautiful, jolly old England, leaving Thursday night, coming back Saturday, and I'll catch the last portion of the David Benavidez, David Morrell pay-per-view card.
That's right.
Saturday night.
That's right.
I might even just drop by with my luggage, just knock on your door.
Where's that?
T-Mobile, Las
at the
Vegas.
T-Mobile, that's right.
All right.
Ooh,
So
that's
we'll
good.
talk about that next week. All right, so that's
Yes.
it for this week's edition of the 3 Knockdown Rule, brought to you by Hustler Casino on behalf of Mario Lopez, Smoking Tim Frazier, and Tino. Till next week, goodbye, everybody.